Hello, everyone, and welcome back to an all new episode of The Financial Confessions. It's me, Chelsea Fagan, your host, founder and CEO of The Financial Diet, and woman who loves to talk about money. And today's guest is someone who has been highly requested. You guys have been asking for her to come on the channel for a few years now, and I'm so excited that we were finally able to make it work. She is someone who talks about sustainability and ethics, specifically in the fashion industry, which is the industry that she has a background in. She is both a designer and a content creator herself. And her story of how she got into specifically viewing fashion this way and sort of removing herself from a lot of the really toxic systems and norms that the fashion industry has kind of gotten us all into is in and of itself extremely fascinating. She also creates content that is incredibly accessible around this issue. Sometimes we've had people on the channel who've spoken of topics like minimalism from perspectives that are maybe, to put it kindly, a bit more shallow than some of what you guys are looking for. And often when I have had people on the channel that maybe didn't dive quite as thoughtfully into the topic, I've heard from you that I should have people like, well, and very specifically my guest today, because people like her not only are presenting this issue in a way that's fun to watch and easy to understand, it's also a way that comes with a real background. As I mentioned, she is also herself a designer, but she has a degree in this space. She's actually studied both the industry and the production, and she's someone who speaks with a level of authority in a space where a lot of people are often talking, pardon my French, but kind of out of their ass a little bit. So I'm so excited to welcome this guest with the wealth of knowledge and experience that she brings, and also just the wonderful perspective of being a YouTuber at her level who knows how to make a good video. I watched like 10 of them before I came here today. Without further ado, I'm so excited to talk about all things ethics and sustainability in fashion with my guest, Justine Leconte. Hello.
Hi. Hello. How are you?
I'd like to thank Nutrafol for supporting TFC. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement. You can grow thicker, healthier hair and support TFC by going to Nutrafol.com and entering the promo code TFC to save $10 off your first month subscription plus free shipping on every order.
And I have to say immediately, also thanks to you for the content that you make on YouTube, because you're also helping a whole lot of people getting savvy with their finances. So what you do is of public utility, I think.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to do what I do and to have people like you on to speak. So first and foremost, before we get into the kind of topics at hand, I want to just learn a little bit about your background in fashion. I know that specifically one of the inciting incidents that got you into how you currently approach fashion was the factory collapse in Bangladesh. So I would love to hear both about your background and about that event to kind of teach our audience who may not know so much about it.
Of course, I'm gladly starting a little bit earlier than this. When I was a child in France, fast fashion didn't really exist yet, which kind of gives me my age a tiny bit. We won't tackle that point though. When I was a child, most of my clothes came from secondhand because clothes were more expensive and this is what my family could afford. Then as a student and as a young professional, when I started interning at companies during my studies, suddenly fast fashion was everywhere. And suddenly I could have a full closet of new clothes. And that was so exciting, right? Because I only had a tiny closet before of secondhand things. Now I could afford like virtually everything and have 100 different garments. I didn't get to that point because quite soon on my fashion journey, as soon as I could afford to shop, I realized that fast fashion items are actually very poor quality and don't last at all. I was lucky to have the standard shape and body that they cut for. So everything kind of fitted me, which is rare. For most people, it doesn't even really fit right. But nothing was lasting. You wash it a couple of times, it's gone, it's unraveling, it shrinks, the flocking, the prints, everything disappears and fades away. And I thought, and also, like over the course of a couple of years, I saw the prices of this kind of garment decrease. I was like, well, I was studying business at the time, and I thought, how? Like, you have inflation pushes all the prices up. how are fashion items going down in price? That doesn't make any sense. So I looked into it, found the horror that is going on behind the scene in that industry, and thought, all right, that's it, I'm done. So my fast fashion journey was actually very, very short. And very quickly, I reverted to either buying secondhand in the first years of my career, or buying just a whole lot less. Going from there, I worked in marketing for a couple of years, got my degree. I was in business. I always loved fashion, and I saw all those scandals, like those factories burning, those people having their rights not being respected and everything. And it really bugs me. Isn't there, where are the brands that are clean, that are doing things right? And I couldn't find a lot. And I was looking at that business model and saying, it can't be that there is not enough choice, not enough alternatives in between fast fashion and designer fashion. Like, where are the brands that are priced between 50 euros and 1,000? Nobody can afford above 1,000. So where is the choice? And I decided, you know what? I'm gonna start a fashion label that is in between, that is ethically made, that has good fit, good quality fabrics, made ethically in a part of the world where I know workers' rights are being respected. I'm gonna do that. Tiny problem. I had never sewn anything or studied anything related. So I went back to school. I quit my job. I moved to New York, actually, and I went to Parsons. I graduated from Parsons after this Rana Plaza accident, thinking, well, with a factory collapse like this, that killed over 1,000 people, injured 2,500 plus people on top of that, like an event of this magnitude cannot not change the industry, right? So I thought naively, while I was doing my fashion degree, that all brands would change their practices because that's the only right thing to do, right? Wrong. It didn't really change anything. People went to business as usual. So when I got my fashion degree, the focus of the label that I started was being an alternative to that completely toxic system that abuses and exploits people, while having the level of quality that you would expect from designers. So many people told me, Justine, you're insane. This is never going to work. People are not doing it. There must be a reason. You have to do the math again. I thought, no, I think it's possible. I really do think it's possible. So I'm going to try. And I did that. And then I realized, oh, but if I do high quality garments, sourced ethically with amazing fit, but people don't actually know anymore what good fit and high quality are, then we have a discrepancy because they can't see why what I make could be better. And I thought, actually, there is nobody in the scene who is communicating openly about this and sharing information for people to know how to choose proportions that flatter them, colors that flatter their skin tone, etc. And I thought, well, I'm going to do that. So I started a fashion channel to raise awareness and education about fashion, to show that it's something that can be really fun, that is useful, because that's the first thing people see about you, and that can be ethical at the same time. Now, a few years down the line, the fashion label is growing every year. I'm adding new sizes every year with every project. And I added jewelry to the mix. Ethically made as well with recycled materials. And the YouTube channel is now getting closer to you, getting closer to 1 million. And it keeps growing. So that proves that people are interested in knowing more. They just don't have the information available.
Well, what you said earlier about it already being a privilege that the clothes available in stores fit you is very true, and something that we deal with here in the US. Although I must say, in France, it's a whole other ballgame. As most of my audience knows, I spend a lot of time in France, and I'm a size 4'6", and I'm a large in a lot of French stores. So being able to fit in French clothes is, something that is not available to a huge amount of people. But similarly, in the United States, even if, sizing is a bit more accessible here, a lot of times what will hold people back from investing in higher quality items, or even being able to shop easily secondhand, is that lack of access to sizing that fits them and to cuts that are professional and all of that kind of stuff. So just on a super practical level, for people who want to start shopping more ethically but find that most of the retailers they would like to support don't carry their sizes, what is, a piece of advice that you would have for them?
So the thing that I say, that I answer to that question, the first thing is to look at countries. So brands typically make the patterns, so the shape and the fit of the garments, for their main market, which is usually their home market, so the country they're from. So if you're looking for Scandinavian brands, they will typically have much longer garments, longer sleeves, longer hems, longer pants. So if you're tall, that's your region, like look there. If you're short and or petite, and you find that garments are always too long for you and that the waist on you lands at the hip level and dresses are so long that it looks like a potato bag, go towards Asia, because there the patterns are made for that kind of figure. So looking for the region, where you're from, women that are curvy, I always say, look in South America. South American brands have the patterns and the shape that you need.
And as far as, shopping secondhand, consignment, vintage specifically, are there strategies that you recommend for people who, and especially women, who would like to shop more secondhand but feel that they don't really know how to go about it in a way that is likely to be productive?
Listen, I would say the best tip is to proceed the exact same way as when you're buying new. First, you make a plan. This is my wardrobe. This is the different garment types that I have. This is what I'm missing, right? So those are the garments I'm looking for. When I enter a secondhand shop, I don't go and browse. It's usually way too full, way too tight, all colors and shapes mix, and you're like, how am I supposed to find anything in there? So I go straight to the salesperson and I ask, this is what I'm looking for. And they're like, yeah, we have, come with me. And they know exactly where is what. So this is how I do in secondhand shops. I don't typically just find something. I'm going there with an idea in mind of this is exactly the kind of that I want, the kind of material, the kind of color, and I know what fits my body shape because it's my job. There are only a few body types, really. You have a pear shape, inverted triangle, hourglass, apple, rectangle. Like those are the main shapes. I talk about this on my channel and I have a video for each type. You can learn like what are the kind of garments, shapes and proportions that flatter my body type. And then when you go to a store, you ask for that kind of thing. It saves you the whole, I'm browsing, but I don't know if I'm going to find anything. Time saver.
It's interesting. I was recently at a secondhand market, and I bought a dress from, I think it's either the late 80s or maybe the very early 90s at most. But I was really shocked because it's a style of dress that I have a few of, where it's a long shirt dress that buttons down the front, ties at the waist. But I was shocked at how high the quality was of this dress in terms of the darts down the front of it. It was lined, it had shoulder pads, the material was quite thick. The belt that it came with was extremely high quality. Like I could use the belt for other things if I wanted to. And I did a little bit of research into the brand of the dress. I don't think it exists anymore, but it was not a luxury brand. I mean, I'm sure that it probably cost a decent amount of money, but it definitely wasn't like a super high-end dress or anything like that. Can you talk a little bit about the economic and kind of cultural factors that have led to, more or less the same dress that I'm buying today? Like I think the brand, it's actually a French brand, Rouge, has like a dress that's extremely similar that I tried on. The quality was terrible compared to this dress. And the dress that I was looking at was not fast fashion in terms of price. It was a $300 dress, and yet the quality was so much worse. So for such an expensive garment, how is it so much lower quality than it used to be?
There are several factors that play there. The first one is the dress that's already 20 years old and that is hanging in the secondhand shop is amazing quality. That's why it survived. So buying older garments is a sign of quality. It has survived already. I don't know how many machine washes and wears. It is a good piece, right? It has already shrunk if it wanted to, so it's not going to shrink anymore on you. Like it's a good quality item. Here I'm setting aside the fast fashion stuff that you find in secondhand shops, because this is sometimes fast fashion secondhand is more expensive than the new stuff. You're like, why? But I'm talking about actual brands that are 20 years old. These are good pieces. Then why we don't have that same level of quality today anymore? For several reasons. First, people expect prices to be extremely cheap. If you ask somebody for the right price of a sustainable t-shirt, they're going to tell you a price that is still way too low, even though they're raising the price. They think they're at a higher level, but they're not high enough yet. A sustainable t-shirt is more than 29 euros, for instance. It's a price that I hear a lot, 29 euros. Yeah, that would be the price for a sustainable t-shirt. Actually, it's not high enough yet, if it's made ethically with good material in good working conditions. So people's expectations of the price are completely biased by the fact that they see everywhere t-shirts for 2 euros. And so they think 29 is a lot. It's not. Talking about a Western European market now, right? So that's why I'm in euros. It will vary in several regions of the world, of course. The next reason is that we don't sew anymore. We don't learn how to sew in school anymore. We don't know how to knit. We don't know how to crochet. We have lost this handwork. Well, the majority of us who live normal lives and don't have a job related to that. So we don't understand why a lining is important in a dress. We don't understand why binding behind the neckline is what allows it to remain flat and look nice on your collarbones. So if people don't notice the importance of these elements, the brands might as well save cut corners on that, because people wouldn't notice the difference anyway. And last reason, probably the most important one, the attractivity of higher margins. Brands tend, in fashion and in other industries, to want to get the most out of it. So how can we increase the margin even more? And at some point, if you go really low on the price ladder, so at a fast fashion item level, then you find that the tops are even square. You don't have a waist anymore. This is because so dresses are like this, and they're like, it's minimal, it's trendy. No, it just saves you fabric. Because if you have a straight line, you can use more of your fabric roll. That's why you do it. So they're pushing trends based on how they can save even more money in production. All those reasons.
Well, you just mentioned the concept of trends and how they're often manufactured for reasons that have nothing to do with, organic cultural shifts. I'm interested, we've talked a lot on the channel before about how, for example, we've gone from having, 2 to 3 seasons to having like 52 micro seasons in a lot of these retailers. And we've sort of, especially with the rise of social media, we've also completely, our relationship to trends and to what is considered current or what is considered fashionable has just radically shifted in a very short period of time. Can you talk a little bit about what trends really mean today and how, to your point, the economic model of fast fashion has a vested interest in this shift?
So first, the different types of trends. You have 3 main types of trends. Macro trends that are really cultural, that really means something for society. Mid-term trends, and then the short-term trends that are called fads in English. I believe.
Yes.
The long-term trends are, for instance, the influence on the pandemic on how much we want to wear casual wear. Because for several years we were working from home, and now the level of styling has sunk. People just won't wear high heels anymore. Like, that's a massive shift, which is probably going to last way beyond the pandemic and for another decade or maybe two, like long-term things. Mid-term trends would be shift. Like right now, we think that sneakers are appropriate, ready-to-wear clothing. Now you can wear sneakers at work. This was not the case. You would not see sneakers on runways 10 years ago, right? Now it's okay. Now it's a proper type of shoe. That's a midterm trend. And then the fads can be from a couple of months to just a couple of weeks. Like the trends that everybody will forget, they won't last. This kind of thing is like, for instance, this week it's fringes, next week is animal prints like so-and-so, the week after animal prints, but not like this anymore, a different type. This is the kind of trend that is completely artificially built, created and pushed by fast fashion brands so that they can sell more. Because the faster a trend goes out of trend, the faster you need to go back to them and shop again. So they need extremely short-lived trends virtually every week for you to want to go back to them every week and shop again. And so it can be completely insane things, like a color that flatters absolutely no one. And there is 1 week where you will see that all over the Shein website. You're like, what's up with this color? But then you see it for an entire week, and then the next week you want it, but the week after it's already out of trend. But it's okay, because this garment only costs you $3 or $5. So you can buy the next one. But did you need that neon green top? No. Do you need the next one? Neither. And yet you buy because you get FOMO. That's how quick it goes.
As it pertains to people's shopping habits, we have seen, and obviously that people have multiplied the just sheer quantity of clothing items that they buy in a given year by an enormous amount over the past 100 years. And that is a shift that feels difficult to totally walk back from. Like, it seems unlikely that we'll go back to buying the amount of clothes that we bought, 100 years ago in a given year. But when it comes to this very pervasive feeling of that you always need to have new things, that you need to be buying, on average, an item of clothing a week or whatever the stat is. What are ways that you recommend people start to, in their own lives, unlearn the messages that they've been receiving from a quantity perspective?
This is a very difficult mindset shift that needs to happen. You need to actively decide, that's the first step, I will not support fast fashion brands anymore. And saying, I do buy fast fashion sometimes, but I wear them many times, so it's okay. No, it's still not okay because of the working conditions in which those garments have been produced, right? So you decide once and for all, categorically, I will not buy fast fashion anymore. Then you're looking at your options, and you need to switch the way you look at the price. Instead of looking at the price tag, ask yourself, how many times can I wear this garment? And then the real cost is not a cost once when you buy it, it's a cost per wear. This sweater, which I'm wearing right now, for demonstration purposes, it was planned. I paid around 150 euros for it. It is an expensive price, even in France or in the UK or in Germany, the countries that I know best. But I've worn it at least 150 times already. And then I stopped counting. It's probably maybe 200 by now. So it is a very good deal. I get a lot of wear out of that one piece versus something that I bought from Shein, which I didn't because I don't shop from Shein, but a garment that you get for $2 or $3, but wear only once or 0 times. So the real question is, if I buy this garment, how much wear can I get out of it? Sequins, fake fur, vinyl are probably terrible ideas. Because a sequin dress, you cannot wash it. You dry clean it 3 times. That's about all you get out of it, right? Plus, it's occasion wear, so it's hard to wear really on a daily basis. Fake fur sheds microplastics. It melts when you wash it. Vinyl cracks very quickly. It's impossible to care for. So looking at the materials like this, you're like, okay, these 3, probably not a good idea. Which garments, which materials, which item types can I really wear a lot? And that's, for me, the filter to anything I purchase.
And in terms of, you mentioned obviously dry cleaning, washing, etc. What are some habits that we should all be getting into to maximize the length, the lifespan of our clothing?
There are a few things that I shared already in YouTube videos. And every time I get comments saying, oh, I didn't know this. So I'm glad you asked. When you keep your garments first, woolen like this should not hang, for instance, because the seam stretches and it pulls on the thread, on the wool thread. So this is something that you would fold in 3 and put on a shelf. You should not fold your bras because it's not good for the shape of the cup. So you put them flat. Pants should best be hanged like this on a hanger, right? Folded only in 2, but flat for all pants in general, because those that have a fold on the center of the leg, same thing, you need to keep them flat for the fabric to remain pretty. So there are tips like this on how to keep your clothes, how to store them away during the season where you're not wearing them, in fabric, not in plastic. The bags you keep them in should be in fabric with a little lavender pillow or sachet in it. It's a natural deodorizer. You put that away, and 6 months later, it looks good again, and it hasn't moved. Then when you clean your clothes, the first mistake that people do is they use a detergent that contains bleach on garments that aren't white. Bleach in general is very bad for the environment, and it goes into the water. But also for the garments, if you don't know if your detergent contains bleach, probably does. So check that in the ingredients. It has to be mentioned, so you will know. You need a different detergent for white garments, colored garments, and don't mix when you wash them, right? Then I barely spin when I wash. I prefer to let things air dry. I never tumble dry my clothes, never. It's always bad. So I don't have a family or kids. I know moms usually tell me, yeah, but I wash so many times during the week, I don't have the time to wait for everything to dry. But actually, I think we do. And it's for the well-being of our clothes. It makes them last so much longer if you don't tumble dry them. Dry cleaner, it's chemical to be avoided if you can, right? So buy garments that can be washed just with water, that don't need chemical cleaning. Yeah, those are the tips that I can think of top of mind. I have a video on this on my channel on how to care for your clothes, which is full of tips and also washing instructions and advice.
We're excited to once again be partnering with Nutrafol here on the Financial Confessions. We actually talk about Nutrafol a lot around the office since our marketing director, Rachel, started using it earlier this year. To be totally honest, hair growth is not something that personally affects me, so I'm happy that we found a product that has had a positive impact for someone else on our team. We all know men experience hair loss, but many women do too, even though it's not as openly spoken about. But here at TFD, we tend to speak pretty openly with each other, and Rachel has openly spoken a lot about dealing with postpartum hair loss, as well as general changes in her hair texture and thickness since giving birth. After all of her other postpartum symptoms subsided, it's the one that has remained the longest. She's changed up the products she uses and stopped applying heat like hair dryers and curling irons completely, but nothing has made a real impact. She started taking 4 Nutrafol capsules every morning with breakfast and says she can already see a difference in the amount of hair she's shedding. We love that for her. Nutrafol supports healthy hair growth from within by targeting the 5 root causes of thinning: stress, hormones, environment, nutrition, and metabolism through whole body health. And in a clinical study, 86% of women reported improved hair growth after 6 months. You can grow thicker, healthier hair and support our show by going to Nutrafol.com and entering the promo code TFC to save $10 off your first month subscription. This offer is only available to U.S. customers for a limited time, plus free shipping on every order. Get $10 off at Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code TFC. Out of curiosity, because I have a lot of clothes that say dry clean only, and I put them in like a little bag, and I put them on the delicate cycle in the washing machine, like the lingerie cycle. They're fine. I don't know if that's just my clothes, but I feel like dry clean only is often not true when you see it on a tag.
So there are 2 potential reasons why the brands will write this on the care labels. The first one is they haven't tested how it washes, and they don't want to take the responsibility. If your garments are screwed up, they don't want you to go back to them and say, but I want a refund. So they just say, don't wash it. So that's dry clean only. The other reason is because your garments might contain materials that are, how is it called in English? That they integrate when you wash them.
Yeah.
Like typically a sequin dress will be dry clean only because if you wash it in a machine, it will lose stuff. And that's microplastics that goes into the water, and washing machines do not filter that. Plus, your dress will be damaged after a few washes. So these are the 2 potential reasons why it's written on there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't own sequin clothing, so I've never tested that theory, but, a lot of times it's just like very delicate materials and stuff like that. In terms of the clothes that are worth investing in, I think a lot of people have a feeling like, okay, I'm going to set aside a certain amount of money to create a foundation of a really high quality adult wardrobe, but they don't really know what are the things that are actually worth spending a good amount of money on if they can't afford to spend a lot of money on everything. So where would you suggest people start?
I would start with regular ready to wear. So that means the basics that you need to build an outfit: pants, skirts, dresses, t-shirts, sweaters, or t-shirts or blouses, without outerwear, without underwear, like the pieces that make the outfit and that people see. I would probably include a good pair of denim. I would include fibers like cotton, linen is a little bit tricky, tencel, which is made out of wood, silk or a silk alternative. Silk alternatives are actually easier to care for. Wool is still a much better option than acrylic. You probably have viewers here who are vegan and who say, I don't want to wear wool. The industry is working on new technologies. I know fabric suppliers who are creating alternatives to wool, which are a lot better than acrylic. I'm not a fan of acrylic, so I will stick to wool. And especially in cotton, you have different weights of fabric. So denim is a kind of weave type, which makes cotton very, very solid. The tightness in which a garment is woven or knitted makes it a lot more durable. So I would pay attention to that and start from there.
Are there any things that you don't like? What about specifically shopping for undergarments for women?
I think that's a tricky topic. I know a couple of brands in France that are very small, that are probably not known in the US, but which are trying to use sustainable materials. Very small quantities. The prices are still a bit too high to be really mass market appropriate fit, but they're working on it, using materials that are very soft on the skin. If possible, no synthetic fibers, because that's not super nice in your close to your intimate skin, and should probably be avoided. But right now we barely know how to do it without using elastane, which is synthetic. So they're working on options like this. Sometimes people tell me, yeah, but I don't want to wear thick cotton or wool things that lose their shape. that don't bounce, that don't really fit you, And this is not the goal, obviously. So they're trying to find something that is as nice as what we're used to nowadays, but using only natural materials. It's really challenging for that category.
That is interesting. In terms of shifting consumers' mindsets to be okay with the higher price point. Obviously, your point about thinking in terms of cost per use is crucial. And we talk about that with everything people buy. I think that's one of the best ways to deprogram yourself from this, really low quality consumerism. However, just in terms of the initial sticker shock for people, less so about how they factor it into their budgets, but more so how they kind of reframe their understanding of economics, what should people be thinking of as normal or as, appropriate when it comes to the prices of these various staple garments?
I guess it depends very much on your income, which region of the world you live in, of course. So it will vary clearly. But I would say in general, it probably makes sense to allocate a certain percentage of your budget to clothes, just like you do for food. A percentage that you think is fine. Is it 2%? Is it 10%? Is it something in between? Somewhere there. I ask people how much they spend on food, right? And usually they know, like they can tell me the total amount in euros or in dollars. They can also tell me how much of their budget it is in percent. But when I ask the same question for clothes, they rarely know. Like people say, I went to H&M and I came out with 70 euros of clothes. And it's amazing how much I got for that price. Then I ask, but okay, so that's one shopping spree. But how often do you go per year? And how much is that in total per year? And most of the time they blank out. They don't know. They just see the single shopping sprees. So allocating a budget to that, like you do to food or to restaurants or to traveling or to your tuition fees, whatever your situation, probably makes sense to start with and realize you probably spend a lot more already on clothes than you think.
That's probably true. And in terms of the actual dollar amount, what do you consider, or in euros, what do you consider to be an appropriate amount to spend on, let's say, a dress that you might wear casually?
It's really a question of budget, I believe. I'm in France and I used to live in Germany. Those are two countries with very high income. There, I would say spending 100 euros on a dress doesn't seem too much. Spending 150 on a dress is probably fine as well. If you get several wears out of it, obviously. If it's a dress that's not only good for your brother's wedding, but also later down the line, not just for one occasion. North of that, I would think, do you think it's worth it? Do you think that you can wear this often enough to justify the purchase? Do you have that income disposable? Yeah. It really depends on the person. It's hard for me to give a proper number, but personally, I would think that 150 on a dress euros is okay if it's a dress that I can wear again and that is easy to care for.
And do you think that 150 price point is a good benchmark for how much the dress would need to cost to be relatively ethical?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because that's, yeah.
Under 100 euros for a dress that is well constructed would look suspicious, even if it's made outside of the European Union. Yeah.
So we got a lot of questions from our audience. So I'm just going to ask you a few of them. Give me just one moment. Are there any tips for clothing maintenance specifically for combating moths, as a lot of the most ethical and beautiful fabrics are also enjoyed by moths? Thanks so much.
So there are natural means like lavender. Moth hates lavender.
Is that true? I didn't know that.
You see a moth, you put a lavender sachet in front of it, it will run away or fly away. Lavender in your closets is always a good idea. It also lasts a very long time. I would stay away from the chemical ones. What's the name? What you would expect me to say? The cedar balls.
Oh, yeah, cedar. Yeah.
This is toxic.
Oh.
It should not touch your skin. or your clothes. I would stay away from this. I mean, there are also chemicals that are very harsh that you can spray into the rooms and that spread in the air and kill everything that's alive in that radius. Very toxic as well for the skin, for humans. So I would not use that either. In general, you should take your clothes out of the closet often enough so that they see light. Moths like obscurity. So if you give air and sunlight to everything, you're fine. And as I said earlier, when you store your clothes for the season you're not in, it should be completely hermetically closed in fabric. Moth cannot get in.
Okay. How can we as consumers evaluate brands' claims that they use fair labor practices and sustainable environmental goals? Are there certifying organizations to look for or other marks that you can use to confirm brands' claims, or other ways to meaningfully research this topic without flying overseas to look at their actual factories?
That's a very smart question because yes, as a designer, I would check the factory before having that factory produce my clothes. But as a consumer, obviously, you don't have that option. Normally, if the brand is doing things ethically, they will gladly tell you about it. They will have an entire page on their website that says, this is how we do it. This is the country where we produce. This is what we pay attention to. You need to look at this language, at the words they use and see, does that seem legit, or are they really justifying how they do things and why? A couple of examples. We use sustainable production. What is sustainable? There is no definition for sustainable. You're saying it's sustainable. What's your definition? You need to define what you mean with that. Another example. We are going to be carbon neutral until year X by 2025. Is it because this company is going to outsource the production to another company so that the CO2 emissions are not going to count for them anymore, but instead for the other company?
Oh my God.
Because that's cheating. That's cheating. Yeah. So are they really explaining, is it their own CO2 emissions that they're reducing? Or are they just outsourcing to somewhere in Southeast Asia? Because that makes things worse, not better. So what is the language that they're using on the website? If you have a question and you can't find the answer online, ask the brand. I do that all the time. I write to the customer service asking, where is this garment produced? Most of the time they say, unfortunately, we do not have that information. Best regards. Well, then, won't buy.
This person says, I would love to hear her talk about the ethics of different fiber types in terms of raw material to finished thread production, the expected length of a regularly worn garment's life based on the fiber content, assuming proper care, and its capacity to break down as a waste product or to be recycled after use.
Many questions in that question.
Yes.
Okay, let me start with what is easy to recycle or upcycle. When it's only one fiber type and not a mix, like 100% cotton, this is great to recycle if the dyes that were used are biodegradable, or you can clean the fiber or dye on top of it, something like this. Sometimes the dyes are chemical and not really healthy. Then you cannot recycle the cotton fiber anymore. But otherwise, if it's 100% something, it's usually easier to recycle afterwards. The length, the life expectancy of a garment varies a lot. To stay with the example of cotton, there is cotton and cotton. Especially since the fast fashion industry started, they say, when they say 100% cotton, it's the worst quality of cotton possible. So this garment will not necessarily have a long life, but really good Egyptian cotton or Pima cotton from Peru, from a brand that really sources high quality fibers, this cotton will last a very long time. So it's hard to compare, and it's not just the fiber type. What was the rest of the question?
The ethics of different fiber types in terms of the raw material to finished thread production.
Generally speaking, natural fibers are most able to biodegrade. So cotton, linen, silk, wool, leather sometimes, different types of exotic hairs, llama, yak, alpaca, these kind of things. these biodegrade because they're completely natural. Those are really good fibers. But then, to take the example of leather, leather is most commonly dyed using heavy metals, including chrome, which is toxic for humans. If it stands with chrome, leather will not biodegrade anymore properly. So you had something that was natural and perishable and biodegradable, and you're turning it into a product that is half chemical. So it depends on the quality of leather. Leather in itself can be considered a byproduct of the food industry, in which case it is a sustainable material, otherwise that would be thrown away. I think as a designer, if I can source leather ethically, it stands organically, and I don't use toxic dyes on top, I have a product which is still natural and which doesn't harm the environment.
Well, on that note, we have several people asking about the ethics of vegan leather.
Vegan leather is a whole topic. Most of the time, vegan leather is not leather. It's another material that is trying to look like leather and to have the feel, the hunt, we say in design, of leather. Vegan leather, in 95% of cases, will be PU, polyurethane, which is completely petrochemical. This is less sustainable than most things you've seen. There are new alternatives, which are also called vegan leather, but which are completely differently created and also have completely different characteristics. You have apple leather, which is a mix of apple, which is a natural thing, bonded with synthetics, not so good. You have cactus leather, which is cool, but often on a knitted basis, because you have to put the thing somewhere to keep it together. And the basis is maybe polyester, which is not so good. So how are these things made? There are people who recycle leather gloves and mix it and glue it together, and that creates a new sort of leather, which is recycled leather. It's much closer to 100% organic, you know what I mean? So there are different developments. It's a topic that I follow a lot right now because I'm looking for a good alternative to leather.
So this question is kind of interesting and something we hear a lot. What are we considering affordable in this scenario? Because affordable ethical fashion almost sounds like an oxymoron. We're all underpaid and overworked. Therefore, most of our ideas of affordable options include those that require unethical and exploitive labor. Heck, most of us are being exploited too. And it seems near impossible to support brands who pay their employees enough and are sustainable when we as consumers don't even receive that treatment in our own jobs.
I understand the frustration. It's a dilemma that is hard to solve. I think it's also a decision that needs to be made by each person for themselves. What is the limit of what they're willing, able to afford? It's a question that I certainly cannot answer for the US. And I know that right now, in the current time, the situation is not necessarily easy for many people working in the US. In Europe, the situation is a little bit better, but I understand that coming from there, you would ask yourself that question for sure. I can't really give a definitive answer. It's a very unsatisfying answer. Let me see if I can find something better to say. What would you answer to that?
What would I say to that? I would say that America in particular creates a mindset where we feel scarcity for ourselves and therefore justify scarcity with others. And I think that it is such an important mental shift in general in such an individualistic society to say that although it may not all be possible, I can at least make the ethical choice to treat others better than I am treated, to make more ethically consistent choices, make the most ethically consistent choices that I can make with the options that I have, and that to sort of pass along exploitation because you're feeling, oppressed yourself only perpetuates and worsens the problem. And I think even more importantly, really undermines the fabric of society and of community. So while I do understand that feeling, and it's something that I've experienced many times in my life, each of us at every level, every day, are faced with many micro choices about how we're going to treat other people. And if we're not always making the choice to treat them as best as we are able to, I think it really erodes communities and it erodes the soul, and we owe it to each other on a very sort of like humanist basis to do better than has been done to us.
I think that's a very wise answer. And I would add a comment on quantity. I think any of us today owns more clothes than we did 50 years ago. Like statistically, on average, that cannot be discussed. Could you have half the clothes you own and pay double for each item? That's how it starts, right? Do you need 100 garments in your closet? Are you actually wearing everything that you own often enough? Or could you indeed afford to raise the bar of what you choose to afford a little bit? Because that's the first step towards in the right direction.
I think that's very smart and something everyone could challenge themselves to do. Also, I'm sorry, but I know the statistics do bear this out, but I also think it's very anecdotally true. Most people don't even wear all the stuff that they own. So it's like you're not even using it anyway. So to remain attached to the idea of having so many clothing items is beyond being, unpractical and unethical. It's also just silly because you're not even wearing those clothes.
There is also a lot of brainwashing going on from the brand side. Like fast fashion brands tell you somewhere in the back of your head, you deserve to indulge, you deserve to shop often, you deserve this extra item that you don't actually need and that you weren't looking for before today. Why spend more when you can get something that works fine for much less? So there's this brainwashing that's happening, and that kind of distracts people from, okay, do I really need this? Do I have the money for this? How much do I want to spend on that? Because this whole impulse shopping thing that they're fostering really plays against us.
I totally agree. Well, Justine, it has been such a pleasure to have you. I've been so excited for this interview. Our audience is so thrilled to have you. I love your channel. They love your channel. You do amazing work. If people don't know, where can they go to watch more of what you do?
My YouTube channel is called Justine Leconte Officiel. If you look for Justine Leconte, you will find me, Leconte. And on my website, justineleconte.com.
Well, thank you so much for being here, and thank you all at home for tuning in. And I will see you next Monday on an all-new episode of The Financial Confessions. Bye, everyone.